Welcome to Why the Long Face? Two old friends lifting the lid on mental health over a beer with author and psychiatrist Paul Keedwell and business consultant and so-called comedian Ollie Turnbull.
Okay, so welcome to Why the Long Face. This time, the Burnout edition. The oh my god, I can't cope edition. Okay.
Yeah, we're good. We can carry on from there if you like.
Why are you recording?
Yeah,
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure. You can turn the music off as well if you want.
Definitely going to do that.
Right. Excuse us, folks. We're going to try to be professional now. Welcome. So we're down in Chatham in Kent, which is...
We like it down here. We're living in the historic dockyard, which is a very famous... it features in Andrew Marr's History of the World, the Chatham Historic Dockyard. Okay, fine. I see he's completely collapsed.
No, I almost burnt out listening to that.
That's a brilliant segue.
Thanks.
Absolutely amazing, because you just mentioned the word burnout, and that's what the episode's about. It's about burnout.
And I guess you want me to define it, don't you?
That was the first question I had, yeah.
It's not a medical diagnosis. It's really just a shorthand for a special type of work-related stress. A state of physical and emotional exhaustion that involves a sense of reduced accomplishment, possibly depersonalization anxiety.
What's depersonalization again?
Sort of a loss of personal identity, a sense of who you are. Because I guess you're not getting a work-life balance.
Doesn't sound very nice. Is it always related to work?
Yeah, specifically a term used to refer to work-related stress.
And the thing you described there so eloquently, as ever, sounds very much like when we talk about anxiety. It sounds very much like similar symptoms of anxiety.
Well, it's yeah. I mean, it sort of refers to exhaustion, but often, a lot of people think that depression is often behind it, and anxiety, or both. But you know, because what it is when the demands of the work situation exceed your adaptive resources to deal with those. There's an unrealistic expectation of what you can achieve in the time frame.
Got it. Because the other thing that sounds like there's an empty is time, right? So there's two types of stress, right?
But also competence.
Oh God, I suppose that's why I suffer quite a lot.
No,
spectrum.
But I mean, you could another reason why. I mean, usually it refers to you just not having a time to get all the work done. But it might also be because you lack the adequate training to do it efficiently,
and
the support.
Nice one. So that's another dimension I didn't really think about it. Very stressful to be expected to do something you're unable to do every day.
And you're not getting enough support from your boss or your immediate boss anyway.
It goes back
maybe
to
your colleagues.
Yeah, it goes back to that thing that we've talked about loads of times, which is how susceptible you are, and then how much is put upon you to make that susceptibility come to life and express itself in anxiety.
Right. Yeah. So it's about thinking about what are your resources and what are the facilities there as well in the workplace. There's two things really: personal resources and workplace resources.
Got it. Yeah, nice one. So let me just talk about chronic versus acute for a bit.
Oh, yeah.
So as I understand it, chronic stress is stress which you absorb or not over a long period of time, whereas
Correct.
acute stress is the kind of stress that someone in A&E would be under. And I get the feeling, and please corroborate, was that a word? Please confirm whether this tends to be something associated with chronic stress. In other words, stress that doesn't go away, stress that happens every day, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all cope with, and we are sort of designed to cope with acute periods of stress, which we've said before, right? So doing a bit of overtime every now and again, I think we can cope with.
Or
right?
indeed enjoy. I mean...
Possibly, yeah.
Some people are thrill seekers and they love that intensity of the acute piece of stress.
I always think a good analogy is when I was a junior doctor, and I actually quite enjoy doing the on-call out-of-hours work, even if I was very busy and didn't get much sleep, if it didn't happen that often.
Got it.
Whereas if you were asked to do 1 in 3, which doesn't happen anymore.
Don't know what that means.
1 night in 3.
Oh dear.
So you do 1 night, you'd have a night off to recover, maybe 1 night to enjoy yourself, and back at it again.
I remember that period of your life, and we were so unsympathetic. We'd be like, "Wait, we're going out and getting drinks," and you'd be like, "I'm on call," and we were like, "Oh, you'll be all right."
Yeah, you'll be all right.
Don't worry. Just a few pints.
Get through it.
And you were very good, very diligent, and you like a drink. You're a thirsty lad. This is well documented.
Well, it depends. Yeah, no, I suppose.
And
I suppose I've suffered, particularly in my earlier years, with the work hard, play hard trap of the medical student. Yeah, which then spills into your working life. Yeah. It's an occupational hazard for doctors.
And you finally find yourself.
We're shocking, actually, as a profession in terms of levels of alcoholism and burnout.
Doctors or psychiatrists?
Well, psychiatrists, I think, are particularly bad. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, it's stressful, man. You told me this before. You're trying to make... This is what my little boy used to say when he was very young, that Uncle Paul used to make people feel happy. And that was lovely. But at the cost of that is you've got a lot of unhappy, stressed people coming to you that you're absorbing every day. And I know that's taken out of you. You try to maintain some professional distance. But again, it also comes down to sharing. Much easier to share, actually, when you're junior. More difficult when you're senior. A lonely place.
You're not sort of sitting around the common room chatting to your mates about the stress you've experienced that day, which is a good way of offloading.
I can't. It's a very interesting story, I think, because I've always worked in business, and that has its own stresses. We'll talk about that later, because I'm particularly interested in the vulnerabilities in the people I work with, particularly the younger folk, but definitely not exclusively the younger folk. And I worked with a guy who used to be an A&E doctor, and he gave up to be a healthcare consultant, a healthcare IT consultant, and he was very valuable because, of course, he knew at the sharp end how computer systems can help and how they can sometimes hinder. And we were very stressed because we were working on a piece that had a very, very tight deadline. And I said, well, he was a great guy, German lad. And I said, Heinrich, whatever his name is, that's the comedy German name, at least this isn't as stressful as what you're used to. And he said to me, oh, it is worse. And his point was that when we have a deadline, you're never off duty, and you've always got stuff to do.
You can't resist it, can you, with the comedy German accent?
German accent. He was German. He was German. Because I said to him, he was very funny. But
why are your German accents like someone out of the Gestapo?
Is there a nicer German accent? Let's try a friendly one. Oh, hello.
No, because when you do friendly, it ends up being slightly sinister.
Yeah. Hello, nice to meet you, and actually nice to probably make meat out of you and bury you and kill you.
No, we're talking about German accents, not Bollywood. Where did that come from?
I don't know. I'm not very good today. I've had sleep and everything. My accents are normally
you're normally absolutely on point. Yeah.
Let's try again.
I would treat you with charity and kindness. That's the usual.
For you, the voice.
Come on then. Anyway, we've got to stop making this the theme of our podcast. The dodgy German accents. Anyway, tell us about Heinrich without an accent, please.
So Heinrich would say to me, it might be stressful in A&E, but he said, you do your job, you do your best for the patients, and hopefully they survive, and sometimes they don't survive. And then you go home and it's over, because you can't take it with you, because obviously the patients are in the hospital. Whereas this is an insidious, never-ending round of stress until we hit the deadline that I worry about day and night on my weekends as well. And I was like really interested to see that to him the chronic stress was the thing that was killing him, and the intense stress of completing a 12-hour shift on A&E was not as bad over a period of time.
No,
as you see.
No,
it taught me quite a lesson.
No, and that's how we are as individuals. I think we are adapted. Our physiology is adapted to acute stress, and we needed the fight or flight response to get over acute challenges, but we're not really designed to have that system firing over a long period of time, because that leads to stress and strain and burnout.
So I like that's the system being constantly fired. I think that's exactly what's happening. And can I just make the point? I know you're in the middle of one there, but that means people who no, please.
Please.
No, you.
No, you.
And some people will feel guilty. Some people will go, well, I go to work every day. My job is relatively straightforward. It's in an office. I'm safe. I'm clean. I'm not down a coal mine. I'm not in any danger, and yet I feel awful, and I feel like I can't cope. How must a fighter pilot feel, or how must?
So I'm not a fighter pilot. I'm not a guy who has to go out at 3 a.m. and repair someone's car that's broken down. Yeah. I should just get on with it.
Exactly.
But that's a misunderstanding of what's going on.
Yeah.
So white collar stress is possibly, well, it often is worse than the sort of stress you just described, I think.
And that's what Heinrich was feeling in a serious point. He was like, I can't turn off. I worry constantly about hitting my deadline.
Right.
And I'm not used to deadlines other than, the 5-minute deadline that this guy's got.
I know we should talk about how that affected him. So, I mean, presumably it would have affected him in emotional, physical and sort of mental ways.
Yeah,
so
it did.
So you get fatigue, don't you, in terms of mental fatigue. So your ability to make effective decisions starts to falter. Your ability to concentrate or hold your attention, because you've got so many things going on in your head at once.
Yeah.
And perhaps because you're not sleeping well as well, you don't have as much physical energy.
Mm. Yeah.
And you might start to get GI type symptoms as well. That's quite common, isn't it?
GI?
Gastrointestinal, so indigestion and all that sort of stuff.
Poor old Heinrich had the whole lot. It was
Heartburn.
really strange. I always think of A&E doctors, A&E nurses, anyone in the medical profession who has to deal with an emergency, firefighters, etc. I always think of them as absolutely brilliant at handling stress. And that was a real stark reminder of the difference between acute and chronic, and it's the chronic that gets you, because as you say, we're not designed to cope with it.
No, and then emotionally you're I suppose in the early stages of burnout, anxious and irritable. But if it goes on, and the stats show that people don't tend to ask for help or time out in that situation where they're trying to impress their boss, trying to make an impression, and it's usually junior colleagues, and they're working in a culture that doesn't invite that, they leave it till it's too late, and then depression takes over. And of course, then that costs the employee much more, because that person then needs to take time off, has no choice but to do so. And you, as an employer, absolutely have a duty of care to that person then. Yeah. And you might even be sued.
Yeah, and that's not even talking about the human suffering, which is the most important thing, of course.
Cynicism creeps in when the system is leading to burnout, and it can lead to splitting of staff. I've seen that happen, actually, in very busy... I remember I worked in it was called an assessment and treatment team in an area of West London, and we're covering a vast area with just 8 members of staff, tasked with essentially assessing anyone who had been referred by a GP or had come in via A&E, but a new presentation of an acute mental illness. We invited some GPs to come and see the team, and they were absolutely flabbergasted. Well, that's it. Just you guys.
Yeah.
And when it was at its worst, people were snapping at each other.
Yeah.
You had to say, as a clinical lead, I had to say, it's very important at this time of excessive demand on our resources that we don't turn on each other. We have to support each other. Nice. But there's a temptation to have a go at each other because you feel that you're the only one who's working to the point of complete exhaustion. It's not the case.
No, and also, when you are at that point of exhaustion, you become a little bit irrational.
And I think a little bit callous potentially, because I remember when I was we talked earlier about on calls when I was a junior doctor. There was one call. I worked very hard, finally got to bed, at about half an hour's sleep between 3 and 3:30 in the morning, and then the bleep goes off again, and you think,
my God,
what's it about? And it's someone's on their way to A&E. And I remember only briefly thinking, God, I hope they don't make it. I hope they die on their way to that.
Wow.
You know what I mean? That was because I was just at the limit of my capabilities. And I think that was just one hint. And of course I didn't really think that, but it was just in desperation.
It's a great admission. And I completely understand where you're coming from. And it's not a callous thing. Well, it sounds callous on the surface, but you can totally understand it.
When you meet that person, of course, it's very different. And all your instincts kick in. But at 3:30 in the morning, you've just been woken up by bleep going beep, 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 and your blood pressure's just peaked again,
Oh, I would do anything right now to go back to bed, even if it costs a life. I can just completely understand it. I had a great experience once. I used to do quite a lot of hosting of seminars in business. And, as you can imagine, in my game, dominated by middle-aged white British men who traditionally...
IT.
Yeah, mostly IT, who traditionally don't have a great record of showing their
But not
emotions.
cool IT either.
Very
uncool. Not Silicon
cool.
Valley IT with lots of black T-shirts.
We've got to make this clear distinction.
Shirt and ties and polyester suits, right?
Polyester suits, and then the senior management would move to a blend, a cotton mix, or a
wool mix,
essentially, yeah. But no, really bland grey people. And this
no
man,
electric blue suits.
They would be taken out and humanely put down. If anyone sort of... someone turned up with a pink shirt once, and there was like that episode of The Simpsons. Yeah, he was taken out and killed.
Of course, yeah.
Because you were on call, so he didn't make it.
I'd have thought you'd just give him the gun and say, you know what to do.
Anyway, I was there, and this guy got up, and he was a very impressive man. He was late 30s, but had an incredibly responsible job, probably looking after an account that was bringing in £100 million to the business. And he stood up and said, I'd like to make a speech about an experience that happened to me a year ago, and I thought it was going to be very self-aggrandizing. His name was John. I remember
aggrandizing.
Yep, that's right. I just blustered through. Remember, I'm a white middle-aged male, so I just blustered through, and everyone will just think that I know what I'm talking about. And he stood up and said, I'd like to tell you about an experience I had a year ago. And I was thinking, here we go, how you managed to turn around a failing account or whatever it was. And he said, it was 4 a.m. in the morning, and I suddenly realized I couldn't do my job. And the whole room went completely silent, and this guy just stood with his hands by his side telling his story about he woke at 4 a.m. and realised that he had to resign from his job because he had too much to do and he was failing on all fronts. He'd let down the guy who'd taken a chance on him because he was quite young for this level of responsibility, and he was penning his email of resignation. He was shaking, he was almost tearful. His wife was by his side in the twilight. He could see the woman he'd let down because he had not succeeded in the job that he thought he could do.
Yeah.
So he wrote a long list of things that he'd failed at in order to set his resignation letter, and went into a fitful sleep. At 7 a.m. he rang his boss, who said, I don't accept your resignation. I think you're very good at your job. Let's go through the things that you can't cope with, make a list, and we'll just take off the bottom half of that list because I want you to continue in your job because A, you're very competent, and B, you're very honest.
Wow.
And you should have looked at the reaction of the audience. There were lots of, you've got this image of tough businessman, and it's not that there wasn't a dry eye in the house, but everybody was absolutely aghast. And you could tell, looking at them, because I was hosting the event, how many people were relating to what John just told them.
Could go in that guy's shoes.
Exactly. And kudos to him. Obviously, he got a massive round of applause, and I talked to him afterwards. He's just a great guy, very brave to be able to stand up as a member of a sort of group of people who are not known for showing their feelings, and he did it. And since then, I've seen quite a lot of positive signs in business. I was lucky
of the culture changing. So you don't, because actually that's a failure of the work culture, isn't it? That he gets to that point of writing that letter.
Correct. You absolutely. That's exactly what it is.
It's a failure of mentoring. I think you told me of a great example of a company, and it's not even a sort of new Google type company. It's an old established company that has mental health
first aiders.
So you know exactly who to go to if you're feeling like that.
So this is a very large. It's British, but it's a utilities company. So it's billions turnover company.
Right.
And I walked in there because I had a meeting there, and there was this wall of people. And what was really encouraging is that they were very demographically spread. To reflect the...
You mean diverse?
Yeah, what did I say?
No, that's fine, yeah.
All right,
diversity, yeah.
Which reflected the cross-section of the company.
Which meant it was immediately more approachable.
I think there was hardly anybody who could look at that wall and think, actually, I'd like to talk to that woman. She's the one that looks more approachable to how I feel or whatever. And I also was talking to the CEO of a national regulatory body. Again, sounds incredibly dull. And actually, funny enough, it isn't. But I won't even go into why it isn't. And a third of what he talked to me about, one was regulation, one was safety. And the third thing he talked to me about, and this is the CEO, the head of a national body, was mental health welfare. And I said, I went to a place where there were mental health first aiders. He said, yeah, we've got that.
Yeah.
As if that's a known thing. And
that's great.
Isn't it? And when I've been lucky enough to have people to open up to me at work and say, look, it's all getting a bit on top, which I feel a massive privilege when they do that. It's not an official role, but I'm happy to talk to people. And when you see people opening up, you just get to know them better. You can help them. But also you bond as well. As soon as you ask about someone's mental health and they are honest with you, it's a beautiful bond that binds the workforce together, binds you with a colleague.
Right. And that then increases productivity, because how do companies work best? When they work as teams, when you've got people bonding with each other in that way. So research by the Mental Health Foundation charity found that policies addressing well-being at work in this way increase productivity by up to 12%. So it's actually not just a kind of nice fluffy thing that makes everyone
economically
feel better.
sound.
It's economically sound. And as I said before, you're saving the huge amount of money that wasted every year, according to the OECD.
Ooh, stats, lovely.
94 billion a year in the UK is the economic cost of people taking time off work because of mental illness.
Yeah, I read a similar thing. What I find, I mean, it's funny that you're talking about the economics and I'm talking about the human factors. It's normally the other way around.
No, but I mean, I think it's important to talk about the economic savings of this as well, so that because what we're aiming to do, partly, I suppose, in podcasts like this, put pressure on executives who make the big decisions about providing this sort of care. Right?
I'm telling you, they're starting to understand. I'm an optimist by nature, as you probably know, and I'm seeing it. I'm seeing people, even because you do get a band of tough, crusty old execs who have never experienced stress, and they love the rush of a high-pressured, sometimes volatile meeting, and they don't really relate. Even that cohort, which is significant in the business world, possibly in the medical world as well, is starting to go, well, there must be something to it, because lots of people are talking about it. I'm encouraged, but...
well, that's good, but I think we have to point out the real problems that still exist, don't we?
Well, I was just about to say, what I do find disturbing and upsetting, actually, is the number of colleagues I can think of in the last maybe 2 years who've come to me and have been, you can tell, close to breaking down in tears.
Of
tears.
On the point of having no choice but to quit their job.
Yeah, men and women who older and younger, who you can tell are on the point, and some have broken down in front of me completely and cried. And I think if someone is so close to crying in front of a colleague, how much hidden suffering is out there. So I'm not by any means saying that we've cracked this.
No.
But the signs are
far from it. Far from it in the professions, I'd say. I've got a lot to say on the medical profession, but also I've seen some stats on the legal profession as well. But let's start with the recent BMA report. That's the British Medical Association report about junior doctors and GPs. And this is a survey of 4,300 doctors and medical students. So overall, 80% of all doctors were at high or very high risk of burnout, but 27% of doctors had already been diagnosed with a mental health condition.
Bloody hell, that's
terrifying,
right?
That's a quarter of all doctors. I think women were more likely to be diagnosed in the last 12 months than men, but it was only a marginal difference. It was 19.7% versus 16.8% in men. 40% of those had an emotional or psychological condition that affected their work.
Wow.
Doctors are trained to be the ones that help everybody else out, so they're very bad at being helped themselves, and there is still a massive stigma in the profession preventing people from going forward. So it's not all the employer's fault. I think there have been, in real terms, cuts in the NHS over the last 10 years, which have affected workload. There are unmanageable workloads and rota gaps, but there is also this cultural shift that needs to happen where there's less stigma around seeking help.
And seeking help early as well.
Yeah, before you start getting diagnosed with mental health problems.
Yeah, a little checkup. How are you feeling? How are you sleeping? Not as well as I did. Early signs, if you like,
right,
of trouble which are copable with, but will fester.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's burnout, a little bit like nervous breakdown, is one of those things that is used but not actually a medical thing.
Nervous exhaustion.
Yeah, that's right.
Something that GPs used to write on sick notes.
But
probably still do.
Is there a case in burnout that once you've hit that point where you can't cope, you can't go to work, or everything is just too much? Is that like a point of no return? Is there permanent damage? Can there be permanent damage?
What do you mean? Well, if someone becomes depressed, that's like saying you can't get better from depression, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. It's just one of those things where it's a burnout. There's a sort of permanence to it, but that's just simply because of the words that are used to describe it. There's no permanence.
As I said, it's not a medical condition as such. It's a description of chronic work-related stress, which exceeds your adaptive resources, and that's going to show itself in mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion, if you like.
Because I think some people fear there's this thing that can happen to you if it's all too much, that is irreversible and will cause permanent damage to your mind. That's a bit of a myth, isn't it?
Well, it's no more true than saying once you've been depressed, you'll always be depressed, I suppose.
Good answer. That is a great answer. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean to say that people can't end up in chronic depression, I guess, in these sorts of roles unless they seek help. So we should probably talk at some point about, what makes an ideal employer in terms of avoiding falling into the chronic burnout sort of situation.
Yeah, we can talk about that now if you like.
So I helped pen an article about stress and burnout in young lawyers. The Junior Law Division should launch guidance on supporting resilience and well-being in the workplace.
So is this for employees or employees?
Both.
Okay.
Right. So firstly, whilst people across sectors may be required to work overtime every so often, because that's inevitable, especially I think because the legal profession has now become hugely more competitive. You're required to work overtime every so often, but limiting your own or your employees' working time to manageable and sociable working hours should result in various health improvements and increased productivity. So in other words, don't let overtime become a habit.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, it's the chronic thing again, isn't it? If you've got something that is intense but over a short period of time and you can see the end of it, that's a lot better than continually changing your lifestyle to accommodate out of hours working consistently.
Yeah.
That was a very long-winded way of putting it.
Secondly, do not expect employees to respond to emails when they're not at work. I thought was an interesting one. And this might soon become legally enforced.
Do you know what? That absolutely resonates with me completely 100%.
There's no point in having a holiday if you're still working.
Well, email is an asynchronous method of communication, i.e. you don't immediately have a reply or you don't, talk over. So that's what it's there for. It's there for to put a record out there, which might or might not need a response. However, in my job, I spent most of the days in my summer holiday this year had an hour taken out answering questions by email because I felt I had to do it due to the demands of the client.
Right, and that means that you're not getting a proper break. A proper holiday, because you have to have a mental distance, not just a physical. The geographical distance, it's almost irrelevant.
Oh, completely.
Being on the beach
irrelevant.
is irrelevant if you're still having to answer emails.
And do you know what? There was no one actually telling me to. My bosses are great. One of them particularly understands stress. The other one's more old school, but is a nice person.
Well, so
they would have told me not to.
Yeah,
to be fair to them.
Right. Okay. So that is a great example of how it is a responsibility of employees, not just employers. So if employers have said, "Look, we don't expect you to answer emails," you should actually go. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. Also, employers don't necessarily expect you to stay behind in the office till 7 p.m. They'd rather you be efficient with your work till 9 to 5, then go and get a proper work-life balance. I think a lot of the time it's an employee's fault for thinking they need to show extra application. Well, actually, it might just show that you're not very efficient.
So what I like about what you're saying is putting a little bit of responsibility, actually quite a lot of responsibility on the person. Your mental health is your responsibility as well as the employer. And you're absolutely right. Thinking about it, my bosses are great.
Yeah, but not all bosses are. And so the government in Ireland is considering a law to ensure workers have the right to switch off from work emails.
I think that is tremendous.
Yeah.
I've got someone working for me and they won't read emails before 9 a.m., right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
The first 2 times I realized that, I was like, bloody hell, read your emails on the way to work. And then it didn't take me long to go, actually, no, don't.
No, don't, because that's important you time.
And can I work around that restriction of this person? Of course I can.
Yeah.
And it's actually down to me that I can. So I make it clear to this person now that, it's absolutely fine. And they go, right, thanks.
So it's about boundaries. It's about employers and employees having boundaries in terms of their work.
Agree.
Then thirdly, which we've hinted at, have an open door policy, right, that allows for one-to-one mentoring and support at all levels of the organisation. So from the top down. Because actually, if you've got a burnt-out employer, a burnt-out boss, they're not really very good at mentoring you.
So the open door policy
mentor them too.
The open door policy sometimes to me can imply it's the responsibility of the employee to go and see someone if they're feeling rough. What about...
no, it's a responsibility of the employer to create a culture of an open door policy that makes the employee feel comfortable about seeking help. So your mental health first aiders, for example. Every employee knows exactly who they could go to if they're feeling out of control. It's that feeling of being out of control, isn't it? And if that goes on day in, day out, you know where it's going to lead.
Question though, what about the it's sort of push and pull thing, right? So everybody knows where to go to seek help. What about whether there's a incumbency on the
on the employee,
on the employer?
No, there is
on the employer,
right,
to ask the question proactively. Maybe it's 6 monthly review. But by the way, how's your mental health?
Well, in your performance review, it definitely should be a question.
That's what I'm asking, and I've never been asked that in my entire life.
In all, really,
correct.
It is one thing we're possibly a bit better at in medicine, in that during your training there was at least someone who's mentoring you who would ask you about how you're doing in general.
Right.
But of course, because you're a junior doctor, I'm absolutely fine.
Yeah, because you're scared.
No, it's not just because you're scared. It's because you delude yourself that you're sort of immortal in your strength of character. The important point is that it should not be considered weak or shameful to seek help.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
And typically in our professions, whether it be medical or legal or others, it's sort of been, well, look, I had it tough in my day. It's character building, you know, and you're not going to get sufficient experience unless you're busy.
Yeah.
And it's a sort of rite of passage, and it's part of your training. And but it's not part of your training to get burnt out and depressed and then leave the profession. So attitudes need to change all the way down the organisation. It's not weak or shameful to seek help and advice in a timely manner.
It's not only that, right? Put a positive on it. It's actually wise. It's
very wise.
It shows wisdom to seek help. No one has a 45-year career which is without bumps. I'm convinced. And it's wise to seek help and best for everybody. Interesting. It's funny, though, that you as a medic have been asked and sometimes felt that you had to hide things to show that you were doing a great job, which you undoubtedly were. But I never have. I never have You've
never been asked?
Never been asked.
Which is poor, isn't it?
I suppose so. I mean, I'm not,
I've known times when you've been in a state of burnout, definitely anxious, irritable.
Shut up.
Difficult to be with.
Oh, God, you're such a pain in the ass.
Yeah. No, of course you're perfect, all, and you can take any level of stress thrown at you.
Well, thanks for putting that on
you're
record.
You're godlike. No,
godlike.
No, you're really not. You're just a human being like everybody else.
The god of sitting.
A squishy bit of organic matter that can be easily pushed past its limit into a gibbering mess.
Right.
Frankly.
Right. Well, okay. As soon as it's going to be like that, there's a few things I've
I've noticed about me over the years. Please don't go there. But extreme levels of work-related stress should not be regarded as a necessary journey to seniority, I think is the point. So the fourth point was actually senior people need to support their junior staff literally by helping them out with their work. Because I think with any occupation, there'll be times when there's just an excessive demand for often quite random reasons. And there should be a supportive network that exists where people act down a bit to support their junior colleagues. That was the fourth recommendation. Act down? Well, when in a legal firm you've got partners and you've got fee earners. What the fee earners are doing are actually doing the work, the legal work, the conveyancing, whatever it is. The partners are bringing in the work through client lunches or whatever it is. But they're also doing a bit of the legal work themselves too, because they have to keep their hand in. But you can see if you have a flexible network, you'll actually do a little bit more of the fee earning work, perhaps, to support your colleagues for a while when things are really out of control. Well, there's two things that'll help with. One is it'll help with the morale of the team because they'll think, actually, this guy gets his hands dirty. Yes. That happens in our firm.
the partners do get their hands dirty, and the ones that do, help out because they tend to produce good stuff. And not always, by the way.
No.
Some of them have lost their touch.
Yeah.
But generally think, okay, they muck in. But
I remember Professor Lazowski of the liver unit at St James's Hospital in Leeds. He was called in once, and he was godlike, so he was hardly ever called upon by his juniors to come in, or out of hours. But they just could not get a cannula into this guy's arm.
Right. I don't know what
It
cannula
was
is.
just a stupid. So it's a Venfly. It's a thing that that they use to put in fluids into your vein.
What, an IV line? Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you say
line, IV line.
Why do you say that? Everyone knows what that is.
Oh, really?
Yeah, man. An IV line.
IV. No one else could get one in. So and everyone was, oh my God, we're asking the great prof to just put a bloody cannula in.
Oh God, he fucked it up. Please tell me.
No.
Really? That's cool.
No one's going to. But he got it in.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Oh, good on
He got it in.
It's like Karate Kid, isn't it? Where the old geezer's still pretty good at fighting as well. You know what I mean?
And I'm sure he'd have got a lot out of that.
Yeah, of course.
And it's great for team morale, as you say. But so doing that kind of thing is truly collaborative and great for everyone's well-being, I think. But also, it is an opportunity for senior staff to learn sometimes, because they, like you say, they can get a bit out of touch about what it's really like on the cold face. They go back and think, okay, this is actually, they're working under pretty tough conditions here.
Exactly the same in our business.
Right. And it's good for me to brush up a bit.
Yeah. Here's an irony, right? I haven't talked about this, but I want to talk about it. It's incredible. When we grew up sort of in the 70s, we were young in the 70s, and they used to think all these new computers, all these new machines, there'll be no men on the production line.
We'll have a much more leisure time.
We'll work 3 days a week. And isn't it ironic that all these productivity tools, instead of looking around for a record I want to put on, I just say, Alexa, play Bruce Springsteen or whatever. Everything's there to save time, and I have less time than I've ever
had because
everybody's got those same time-saving tools.
Exactly.
So the competition's still the same. So you just work more and more and more.
Yeah.
My work is so efficient now. I come home. I'm doing calls early morning and late night at the moment. So I come home, I go to bed, and I'm on.
You're not a great advert for this episode.
I'm not, am I? I turn my camera off so they can't see I'm in bed, and I'm, doing my thing. And no, I'm not a great advert for this. You're quite right. I've got colleagues who are much better. They compartmentalize. They turn off, and you know that Bob won't be available because Bob turns his machine off. And for the first 2 times he does it, it's fucking
and you
annoying.
know what? The rest
and
of
then
us.
you go, well done, Bob. You're off fishing. You're off with your kids. You're doing whatever you want. Actually, who's the wise one here?
Well, that's probably a good place to think about a summary.
Well, I've learnt a lot, as I always do, spending time with you, Dr. K.
Likewise.
Really?
Some great examples from you today, yeah.
Oh, bless you. Yeah. Well, I've been in the corporate world a long time.
And I love your summaries.
Oh, no, this one's going to be a bollocks one.
Oh, no.
Well,
it's going to be shabby.
Know.
Well, let me be the judge of that.
Okay, well, listen.
So tell me what you've learnt, Oliver Turnbull, business consultant and so-called comedian.
So I have learnt that burnout is a thing. It's not just a complete moment in time, but it's a reaction to usually, in fact, almost exclusively, chronic stress in the workplace. Tends to be a white collar thing, manifests itself in over worrying, the inability to concentrate, difficulty making decisions, being less creative, being tearful, having sleep problems, headaches, etc., and sometimes intestinal issues. Classic signs of stress, but due to chronic pressure at work and potentially caused by poor support from people's bosses. It affects everybody, and simple things in the workplace can be put in to help the problem, such as senior people digging in, an open door policy whereby people feel that they live in a culture where they can go and see people, a more proactive approach to detecting mental health problems by simply asking the question at review. Not something that's irreversible, but can lead to other mental health issues and should be addressed in the workplace and is being. But perhaps not as much as we would hope.
There's still a lot to do.
Wastes an incredible amount of people's time. And finally, the thing I learned today, well, I didn't learn it, but it was re-emphasized, is that looking after people's mental health, the most important thing is it reduces suffering in the workplace, but it's good for business.
It's good for business, good for productivity. Fantastic. Very good as always, Oliver. I would say burnout is as relevant now as ever, although I appreciate your optimism, and I do think things are changing in the corporate culture. What was the corporation, by the way, that had your mental health first aiders? They should get a mention.
It was Southern Electricity.
Southern Electricity. Good one. So, yeah, I think the key causes of burnout, demands exceeding resources. High workload is just one of the things. Inadequate training could be another thing. And advice not being available when required. Emotional support not being available when needed. The culture not being encouraging of coming forward. And also the employees having the notion that it's somehow shameful to seek help. And the key solutions are letting staff know how they can seek help, changing attitudes, seniors acting down, as you said, having more of a team ethos, and there needs to be a culture of corporate responsibility for mental well-being, mental health mentors, flexible time off, but also time off being properly time off.
Yeah, couldn't
not
agree more.
expected to answer emails, because that is work.
Oh.
And senior executives as well need to be educated on the Disability Act. This is something we didn't cover. You can't sack someone for being depressed. You have a duty of care to them. You'll get sued if you do that. Better to intervene before they get depressed.
I quite like that because it takes some of the pressure off. If you feel you're suffering and close to burnout, you will not get sacked for it. You cannot get sacked for it.
No.
Please remember that.
No. If you find that you are becoming depressed and you're still dragging yourself into work, please don't do that. There's a good chance that your depression will deepen and get even more intractable, if you like, and take longer to recover from. You have every right to go along to your doctor, say I'm depressed, get it diagnosed, and get all the support you need. And you definitely need either reduced hours or time off altogether. Often I find reduced hours is an effective way of dealing with it.
And if you do that, take action, the chances of an improvement in your state is incredibly high.
And just remember, your employer has a duty of care.
Nice.
If you get an unsympathetic manager, you can go above them. Yeah.
And you owe it to yourself to do that, because there's a large emphasis here on look after yourself.
Yeah.
You deserve it.
So, okay, I think that we've pretty much, have we wrapped up there now?
I got nothing else, man.
Got nothing else in the can?
Nothing else in the can, on paper, anywhere.
Okay, so
I'm kind of happy that we've covered most things.
Let's just say then, as usual, please check out our website. We've got an article up there already, which summarised a lot of things we've said in this app. Do get in touch with us, Oliver.
Yes, so you can tweet, which is WHY, TLF, so YTLF. That's our handle. And you can communicate on Facebook. YTLF is our handle there as well. We have an Instagram account, which is rubbish. Please ignore that.
No, we don't ignore it. We're going to make it better.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We're going to make it better.
Wherever you get your podcasts from, do rate us.
Yeah, and comment as well.
Please.
And it doesn't have to be positive. But if it's negative, put that on Facebook.
So we can ignore it. No. All right, see you next time.
Later.
Thanks. Bye.